All right, now we got to get into some real business today. And because of during the time that I thought David Collins may no longer be with us, I started looking into some of his heroes. I thought if we got to pay tribute to this guy, we should pay homage to the life that he lived.
Mhm.
And much like our next subject, David Collins started radio when he was 18. That's a big thing about David Collins. He's a professional broadcaster.
Yep.
So I thought, the only other guy that I know of that started radio when he was 18 is the Opester, the great Opie. He was a friend of this show, by the way. He
Yeah,
likes us. Yeah.
that's true. He heard.
Yeah. So you may remember, I want to say this was back in like March or April when Anthony was out at a bar, excuse me, or a restaurant, and saw a guy who looked exactly like Opie.
Exactly.
And
Exactly like him.
yeah, I always like when I say something's exact and Craig
No, I know, but
emphasizes it with exactly. Guys, if you thought Mike was lying, you trust old Craigers.
that's right.
I'm going to emphasize it with another exactly.
I'm only saying that because there's a lot of times you'd be like, God, there's similarities. Until Opie addressed it, I was convinced it was him.
Yeah, so Anthony put out a tweet where it's like, hey, I see Opie at this restaurant. And all the replies were like, talk to him, you pussy. Like, holy shit, I can't believe you. So you guys are going to talk, right? All that. Like, people thought it was Opie.
Yeah, and actually, Anthony, he just tweeted out the picture. He didn't type anything with it.
Yeah, or it was a video. But yeah, there was no commentary or anything. He's like, just holy shit, look who I ran into. And people bought that it was Opie. Opie, for some reason, went on this tirade. He was furious with Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
And furious with the people that believed it was Opie. He was very mad about this for some reason. And he said this quote that stuck with me. He said, you don't talk about me. I won't talk about you. We're done with each other. We're just done. Like he was sick of talking about Anthony and said, don't you talk about me anymore. So Anthony, for the most part, has kept up that end of the deal. Anthony kind of stopped talking about Opie. He's had a health scare. He's had other things to worry about recently. So I would say Anthony hasn't done a lot of Opie content in recent months. So every few months we like to say, let's check in on the Opester. And the last time we did this, we said, okay, maybe it's going to take him a while to flush all the Anthony out of his system. Maybe he's backed up. He needs to get rid of it. So we're going on about, 9-10 months now?
Yep.
Of Opie saying, hey, you don't talk about me. I don't talk about you. And I said, well, let's check in and see if Opie's still talking about Anthony. And what I found was a program entitled Opie and Anthony, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So he's talking about every aspect of their relationship. You know what? Shame on me. I left part of the title out. Part 9 dropped this week.
No, here's the intro. This is the intro for that.
Yeah, so this is a little taste of what Opie's going to be talking about. Maybe you're thinking like, hey, he's talked about the bad and the ugly. Maybe he's going to get into, some of the good. Maybe that's the point of this show.
One of the guys is obsessed with race. The other guy was never that good. I did whatever I could for Anthony when he got fired for the racial crap. He started this BS narrative that I didn't stick up for him. He could go screw for saying that if you want to know the truth. Can you imagine blocking the guy you did a massive radio show with? Like I said, the good, the bad, the ugly.
So I think Opie's looking to fling some dirt here.
Yeah,
it seems like what he meant was, hey, Anthony, you stop talking about me. I'm going to have the only videos that I get over 1,000 views are going to be talking about you. That's the actual deal he wanted to make. So I went through this episode. And by the way, the idea, the narrative that he's spinning now that Jim Norton wasn't good on that show.
He says that all the time.
That's the strangest one to me of all, because first of all, it makes Opie look like a liar. Like Opie would talk on the air about how great Jimmy was, how talented stand-up he is, all that kind of stuff. So Opie was just lying to us. Like that makes him lose credibility, no?
Definitely. His comments about Anthony, depending on how you listen to it, could be true. So
well, the one thing he's right about some things that we'll talk about is like the racial stuff is, I don't know who Anthony thinks he's making a point to. You know what I mean? The people that follow him are either following him to get worked up about what he's saying or agree with him. So when he tweets out like these stats about crime related to race and all this stuff, like I don't know what argument he thinks he's proving at this point. It's and like think about other things, Anthony. Be funny. Like come up with some funny shit. We got it. The far right wing political stuff is not why people find Anthony funny. It can add to it, like he can make it funny. But on Twitter, I think he stopped making it funny a long time ago.
Come
Or
on,
I
Anthony.
just don't get the joke, maybe.
Yeah, get back to talking about the spaghetti dripping down the wall, please.
Sure. But yeah, like he makes that's the one point he makes about Anthony where it's like, all right, I'm with him. But also I would say to Opie, why are you so angry about it?
No
Like
shit.
Opie will go on this rant like, enough with the race garbage.
Well, I know exactly why.
Why?
Because he's gonna get the shit like, yeah, you're saying all this, but you worked with him for 20 years.
What do you mean? Why would that benefit Opie?
Because
You're saying so yeah, you're saying that he's making it seem now like Anthony's spun down this rabbit hole of race.
yeah.
Yeah, he does do that where he's like, yeah, now Anthony's talking about race for the first time. It's like, I don't know. Did you hear the show when Obama won?
Did you hear anything he's ever said, really?
Anytime Patrice was on, were you listening or were you playing fucking Candy Crush?
He was doing the Candy Crush.
All right, so where are we going now with the Opster?
I can't even.
Oh, this is where like he's done, man. Like, enough with these comments. I hate these comments, these haters. When that's what all he does every single day. It would be like if I came on here and I'm like, I just can't stand that Tom Myers is doing stand-up. Just enough, Tom. It's like, well, that's all you're talking about, Mike. You know? Oh, Brendan Schaub, enough. Will you stop podcasting? Enough already. It's like, no. I enjoy that he's doing it because I get to talk about it.
You refuse to sign contracts for zero reason. What are you, Matthew? Were you there? What are you talking about? I can't do the same freaking BS over and over again.
Really, Hope? Because you've been doing it for, let me check my calendar here, 8 years. It's been roughly 8 years that you've been live streaming from the beach or 10,000 feet above Manhattan or whatever he says.
They got us all excited briefly too when their reunion on air.
Yeah.
That thing came out, and then like 2 weeks later, Opie took a picture at Anthony's studio. Like,
Yeah, they were flirting for a little while. There was talk of like Opie buying into Compound Media.
Yeah.
But here's the thing with Opie, and this is what he does. He did it this week with the Dabbleverse with like Kevin Brennan and Shuley and those guys.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, I'm going to talk about John this week. By the way, I made my return to the Dabbleverse. I don't know if you saw that. I was on with Carl and the boys on Point Dabble Point.
How dare you?
Well, I like to think that's where if Carl invites me on, that's where I'll talk about John. I'm just not bringing that trash here anymore, you know?
Yeah, we keep this show clean.
Yeah. I went out, I had sex with a whore before I came back to my wife, you know?
My God.
That's all Carl is to me.
Clip it.
He's a cum rag.
Yeah.
That'll get us off YouTube.
For sure.
But I will explain this one because I saw you. I didn't just.
I won't talk about it, but I'll talk about this one.
Yeah, and for the next 40 minutes of this episode, which is part 9 of a series that I'm doing. And but here's what's interesting. Opie talks about Anthony so much. What this show is, for those of you that aren't aware, it's not, he didn't sit down and say, I'm going to do a series about my and Anthony's relationship. He took clips from his daily stream where he's talking about Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, he's been able to compile 9 40-plus minute episodes.
But he doesn't talk about it.
That's how often he's talking about Anthony. And every time he comes up, he's, I'm so sick of it. You know,
Why do
like
you guys
just
ask me
like
about
when you guys super chat us and make jokes at Craig's expense, and I go, guys, come on, enough already. I don't like doing that.
Cut it out.
It's garbage.
I didn't. Why would I?
He's so exhausted.
What happens is, like, Anthony starts all sorts of garbage, and then I got to defend myself. Why would I not sign contracts for no good reason?
So let me explain for anyone that isn't up on their Opie and Anthony knowledge. Anthony has talked a lot about how Opie would wait till the last minute to sign his contract.
So has Jim. So has Sam.
Yep. Travis, Iraq, they've all discussed this, that the staff and Anthony had no idea. They were left in a cloud of mystery as to what Opie was doing, because he felt he was playing like mind games with management to squeeze a few extra bucks out of him. Now, Anthony's philosophy, at least according to Anthony, I don't want to get involved in the lies that Opie talks about. So, at least according to Anthony, his strategy was always, why wouldn't we take a 5-year deal if they give it to us? 7-year. Like, how many times are we going to have to be fired to know that we should take a long-term deal? And ultimately, look at what happened to both of them. They probably would have been better off signing long-term deals.
For sure.
You know, the company would have found it. Maybe they still would have fired Anthony, but when Anthony got fired, he had 3 months left on his contract. It was 4th of July. I think the deal was up in October. And so I assume the company would have found it a lot easier or harder to fire him if there were 3 more years left on that deal. But Opie would always sign these 1 or 2 year deals thinking that they could renegotiate the next year. So this is what he's talking about when he's like, they're lying. Apparently they've all come to this conclusion to lie about this very specific thing. Now, what's interesting is Opie forgets that there's audio of all of this. So not only do Jim and Anthony and Sam and all these people talk about it, as a listener, I know this happened because they would talk about it on air every time the contracts would come up. Is they didn't know if they were signed until literally the day the contract was renewed.
The amount of money they were throwing at us, can you use your stupid brain? Why would I not sign a contract for no good reason? Did you go to school?
By the way, Opie's not like highly educated, and yet he's come to at least like Stuttering John went to NYU when he says that shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't agree. I don't think where you went to college, makes a man necessarily. But like, Opie went to Geneseo, which is like, I think for broadcasting it has a good reputation now, but it's not Harvard. This idea that like he's so much more educated than his audience is just not correct. He's a dumb guy. Like, I don't know why he's sticking to this. Like, did you go to school?
I like to why would I hold out and not sign for all that money? I think it's because exactly what happened. He was always kind of hoping for.
Well, listen. Well, maybe there's some of that, but listen. I think he explains it. He's like, "Why would I do this?" And then in Opie fashion, explains exactly why he did do it.
Money here.
Anthony has no money. The fact is,
this is interesting. By the way,
that's also just not true.
Well, here's what's interesting though. He's speculating about Anthony's finances because of his.
Oh,
so Opie has a house in the Hamptons. He has an apartment in Manhattan. So things have gotten a little expensive. Now, Anthony, I don't know. I don't think Compound Media is like a crazy success, but I assume he does okay.
I gotta assume he's making at least $500,000 a year.
Why would he keep doing it and keep adding shows? Like, why would he lose money on that project? It doesn't make any sense.
Right, and I think his net worth was like $12 million or something crazy.
Well, yeah, they signed. I think they made like $15 million over their career each. The two
and that's
of them,
just on contracts and not live show like the Virus Tour add-on.
Any other stuff they did like that, yeah. I don't know that number to be true. That's just what I've heard over the years. But like Anthony has done okay, and I know Anthony would always talk about investing. And he's also a gambler and a drunk, so maybe some of that takes away from it. But like Anthony would talk a lot about investing and spending his money wisely. I don't see Opie as like a smart guy that's squirreled his money away. So there's a little projection here where he's assuming Anthony is broke because of his own situation that seems ominous.
Yeah, and Mike in the comments says Anthony just built a new compound in South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, like, but again, Anthony lived on Long Island and is now moving to South Carolina to save money on taxes and shit like that. Whereas Opie lives in the Hamptons and Manhattan.
Anthony has no money. The fact is, I need a little run. Considering what the Opie and Anthony show did, considering the amount of people that were listening to Opie and Anthony, considering the amount of money we were making executives and salespeople across the board, I shouldn't have to worry about money ever again in my life. And same goes for Anthony. I'll
Hey,
stick up.
maybe you guys should have signed longer contracts, huh?
Maybe you guys should just, fucking talk again, please.
Maybe you shouldn't have filmed Booker in the bathroom
Oh, shit.
if you needed this money.
No shit.
I have a lot of money left. I'm gonna have to probably make some big moves to to continue living the way I do. The fact is, they weren't paying us enough, and so I was the only one that would fight and go, "I ain't signing this. This is garbage."
Everything's garbage with this guy.
Garbage.
I don't know when. I think that started late in the Opie and Anthony run, but it's a new-ish thing. Like, he didn't do it his whole career, where he's like, "This is garbage," where he puts on this affect to his voice. Actually, I was listening to Carl the other day.
Mm-hmm.
They were playing clips of you remember Ben Avery, the guy that left Tim Dillon's show?
Yeah.
He started a show called Lemon Party, I think it's called.
Oh, good name.
And then those guys stumbled upon Opie somehow. And they were playing clips of him, and they're just like mocking him. They're like, "What happened to this guy?" Like, he was a titan in radio, and look at him now. And they're laughing at the view counts. Like, we get more views than Opie. Like, it's he's talking about what a legend in radio he was, and that's true. He hasn't been able to translate that to podcasting or YouTube or anything.
He just needs like a fucking microphone that doesn't sound like shit, and it would probably improve.
Well, and some sort of talented people around him.
That's
maybe
right.
a former HVAC technician and talented comedian. If you could find two of those to put next to him, I think you'd have a great show, and maybe a better microphone. You're right.
I think the mic is the first thing to start with.
It's the easiest, yeah.
Next we got him talking about how there'd be no show without Opie, which is true.
Oh, well, we'll see. But I just want to say one more thing about the money thing. He's been talking about this a lot lately, where he's like, "I need another run. I need another financial run." It's like, Opie, take your kids out of fucking private school. Move to the suburbs. Don't even take them out of private school if you don't want to. But like, cut some costs. You're living like a guy who's still making $3 million a year when you're making, $40 a show from super chats.
If he goes to Anthony, I guarantee you Anthony will do whatever he wants.
Well, Anthony would definitely be open to it, but I think working with this guy is Anthony just had a fucking heart attack or whatever happened to him. He doesn't need another one.
Quadruple bypass surgery.
Yeah, imagine what that would do to your heart working with Opie again.
Maybe make it full. Maybe he misses him.
Maybe, but I think it would be quite exhausting, and I assume it's something Anthony doesn't want to deal with, is dealing with this guy. Like, I didn't get to finish, by the way, because I went on my rant about Carl. Opie with like Kevin Brennan and Shuley and these guys is like, "Hey, I'm going to talk about the Dabbleverse. Everyone come watch me." And then like he kind of invites himself on Shuley and Kevin's shows, and then he's just an asshole about it. Like, he won't go on. He makes them come on his show. It's a whole fucking ordeal. Like, dealing with this guy seems exhausting. I've never dealt with him personally. But just from like, he also would throw out like, maybe he's going to invest in Gas Digital. That's where like Lewis and Opie's interactions started years ago. Mm-hmm. And Lewis was like, okay. And he did his podcast and he entertained the idea. And then Opie was just a pain in the fucking ass. Like, every time I hear a story about dealing with this guy, I've heard a lot of them. Mm-hmm. I've never heard anyone say, "Boy, it was a dream. What a peach this guy was to work with." I can't believe. I mean, if you're telling me I could spend the day at an amusement park or work with Opie for a few hours, I'm working with Opie.
I may or may not know a former boss of his who may have used the word exhausting quite a few times.
And that's 25 years ago. Yeah. More.
Yeah.
So like, Opie's been this way. He's just been a prima donna, and he mentions Howard Stern all the time. And he's like, Howard was he mentioned that in the contract talk where he's like, "I saw what Howard was getting paid, and I knew we weren't making enough." And I've gone on record plenty of times saying, like, I think the Opie and Anthony show was better than the Howard Stern show. I enjoyed it more. Mm-hmm. But to say it was more popular or even close is insane.
I bet its peak it was pretty close.
I don't know. There's no way. Craig, Howard Stern
So sorry, hold on. Not Howard Stern at its peak, but at the same time. Do you know what I'm saying?
I
Like,
really don't think so.
before Howard was on Sirius, they weren't even close. Not even
Ho-
close.
I mean, Howard. There was a time where Howard had 30+ million people listening to him. In
Well, that's what
one.
I'm saying. But once he moved to Sirius, it was probably more equal than people think.
Maybe, yeah, that might be true. I would say the end of Opie Anthony's run, it was probably a lot closer.
Mhm.
But just the idea, like Opie and Anthony, the name recognition, the idea that Howard Stern and Opie and Anthony were bringing equivalent money into Sirius is crazy talk. I don't think that's true.
No.
Maybe if you broke down subscribers, you're right. Maybe there's something to that at the end when Howard started to kind of drift away from what he was.
Mhm.
But this idea that Opie thinks like he deserves as much as Howard Stern is crazy. And Anthony, you can tell the difference in the tone of what they do, where Anthony doesn't have that hang up. Like Norton's still at the company because he never felt compelled to compare himself to Howard Stern. Whereas that's all Opie does is he's like, Howard was making this much. We should be making. Even at the end of O&A's run, like Opie started taking Fridays off
Yeah.
just to be more like Howard. And just Jim and Anthony would come in and do the show.
Everyone's
And
like,
it was
"Thank God."
better, yeah. Nopey shows, they call them.
Yeah, but here he is talking about no shows, no show without Opie.
Oh, yeah, which we've said before, like, Opie had a role on the show. It's certainly not the same show. But now Opie's suggesting, like, SiriusXM wouldn't have known what to do if Opie got hit by a bus, I guess.
More money. And one time, because those dopes signed before me, and I said, I ain't signing. And they're like, well, there's no show without you. I'm like, oh, well. I ended up making a few $100,000 more than those guys because they were.
Can I ask Opie? Jim Norton is still there 8 years later. How could they have thought there's no show without Opie when one of the guys has his own show now and has for some time?
The one that you say is not any good.
Yeah, this is the thing. This is where Opie gets in trouble with his own logic. Is he's like, that worm Jim Norton stole my job. It's like, well, why would Sirius do that if they said there's no show without you, Opie?
And
What?
he didn't steal his job. He's in the same chair.
What spell was Sirius under in between the time where they were like, Opie, there's no show without you, to, hey, Jim Norton, here's the morning show.
Signed their contracts behind my back. I'm like, I don't care if they sign. I ain't signing. And then they're like, well, what's it going to take? And then I finally gave them a number that was a bit higher than what was on the piece of paper in front of me. And they're like, all right, done.
So this is a lie, I assume.
Um,
No, here's what's interesting. I remember listening to Opie and Anthony, like, I remember their contracts were always up on October 1st, the first week of October.
Yep.
And so I remember them, like, it was a big deal coming down to the wire. They'd always be like, we don't know if we're coming back because someone hasn't signed their deal. But O&A always, like, kind of, Opie specifically would kind of brag, like, when they would talk about, like, other radio duos, Opie would always say, we negotiate our contracts together. So, again, another lie that Opie is tangled in. It's like, well, did you do that? Or did you say, hey, I don't care if those guys signed, pay me more? Now, that's an interesting negotiating tactic because from SiriusXM's perspective, they're looking at it and saying, well, we already have Anthony and Jim.
Right.
We have no choice but to throw more money at the one guy who hasn't signed.
If I was Anthony, I would have in my contract, like, I'll sign now, but if Opie gets more than me, I'm getting bumped to the same number.
Right. Well, they might have had that. There's some term, anyone who knows anything about contracts will know, but there's some term like that where they could have basically equal pay, like their contracts are tied to each other, basically.
And Opie just wanted to be like, I'm making more than you.
Surely, yeah, that was definitely an ego thing, but I don't understand from a negotiating perspective. I'm no expert, as we've seen. But why would SiriusXM say, well, we have 2/3 of the show. Some people consider it the funnier 2/3. They're here when you're not often. We need to pay you more money now.
Yeah,
and I don't understand their logic there.
If they go in and they're like, we're going to go back to regular radio if you guys don't bump the number up, they're going to get whatever number they asked for.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It was well. This was a time where like Opie and Anthony and Jim could have left and done a podcast together, and it would have been massive.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know Opie's logic there. I suspect he may be lying, but who knows?
He might not be. He might be fibbing.
Yeah, there's a good chance.
To say that I didn't sign contracts for no good reason, you obviously don't know business or anything. You probably barely made it through school.
Again, he keeps harping on this. Like, you didn't go to school.
He's been
Like,
paying attention too much to Stuttering John.
Anthony's a high school. It's weird. The guys that Carl covers, John, Opie, Patrick, Michael, probably those three specifically. It's weird how they kind of like morph into each other, and now they talk about each other. Like Carl has genuinely pulled it. Like, you know, John talks about how he's the master. He's the, you know, the puppet master of this world. Carl has led these guys into becoming each other and talking about each other. It's dovetailed into something beautiful. And yet Opie and John like talk about how smart they are, and they're too dumb to realize that that's what's happening.
Here he's talking about the reunion.
Yeah, so people, you know, and at this point it's got to be just people that are doing it to annoy Opie, because every time he's like, "Oh, this again." "Oh, I feel bad for you. You're still talking about this." And, you know, they say, "Hey, when are you and Ant getting back together?" And he always gets furious, but this is him poo-pooing that idea.
If you're broke, do a reunion live show tour with Ant, but you're an imbecile, so you won't. Yeah, I'm an imbecile. Is that what it is? I'm an imbecile. Is that what it is? Official court at Ramsey. First of all, I'm not broke.
It's great to not be able to get the sentence out when it's like, am I an imbecile? As if.
It is funny having someone call him broke with the view that is behind him. It is pretty funny.
But here's the thing. Opie's getting mad at this guy. Like, "Oh, yeah, right, I'm broke." Opie's the one saying, like, "I can't afford my lifestyle anymore." So call it whatever you want. Maybe broke's not the right word. You're saying you can't afford to live the way you're living. You need a job. You said that, Opie.
That was you, sir. That wasn't a commenter.
See that I need another little run. Would you want to work with Anthony at this point? Go read his Twitter and then truly get back to me and tell me.
There we're with you. I don't agree with the cadence, but there we're with you. It's a little. I can understand being like, "Boy, this guy is."
Hey, Ant, I've wanted nothing more than to reunite with you over the past few years, but you're a bit much.
What's interesting though is like when you watch Anthony's clips, he's not like that.
He doesn't talk about it. It's only on Twitter.
I don't know why he feels the need to do that on Twitter. I don't know who it's like influencing or impressing, or I don't know what the benefit of it is. But when I see Anthony's clips, I'm like, "Oh, that's the same guy I listen to."
Right. Still sounds the same. Still talks about the same shit.
Yeah.
I want to work with that guy. So I'm an imbecile because I went to a reunion show with a guy that has completely and dramatically changed and is obsessed with race issues in America.
Yeah, that's new.
Yeah, right. What about when you were calling him to boost your numbers, Opie? Was Anthony not racist then? Patrice ONeil's been dead since 2011 and would constantly call Anthony a racist.
He knew.
What were you missing, Opie? What rose-colored glasses did you have on that you didn't realize that you worked with the guy through Obama's election and re-election, through Ferguson and George Zimmerman? Like, all this stuff happened when Anthony was on a show with you. You didn't notice his fucking Twitter then? It's not like the day when Anthony got fired for the tweets about the woman he was taking pictures of. It's not like Opie and Jim were like, "My word."
I think they were
what
like,
did this man become?
I think they were like, especially looking at Anthony's Twitter now, I didn't think those were bad at all.
He's gotten way worse.
Way worse. Way
Well,
worse.
that's where I'm like, I get what Opie's saying about Anthony's Twitter. I don't love that shit as like a fan of Anthony's.
Correct.
But like,
it's really hard to defend when he's like literally typing out the N-word.
Yeah, don't pretend you're like all of a sudden like this Anthony guy, he's up to some shenanigans that I don't care for.
Would I do that? Go read his Twitter. It's right there. Although I blocked him years ago. Can you imagine?
Hey, hold on, Opie. Well, then how are you reading his Twitter?
His burners that are like, "Oh, you're the man, dude."
It's great. He is so Stuttering John. It's great when these idiots contradict themselves, where Opie's like, "Go read his Twitter." I mean, I blocked him years ago, he says.
If he just lost that attitude, he would be liked by so many more people.
Listen to this. Well, this is what Norton talked about. Norton would always say that he goes, there are two Opies. That's the thing.
Yes.
He's like, Opie's not some monster. It's like there were times where Opie could be cool and fun to hang around. Like they were friends. Jim and Opie were genuine friends.
Mm-hmm.
longer than Opie and Anthony were.
Mhm.
But Jim would say, like, then there's this when he gets in these moods and he's impossible to deal with.
Did a massive radio show with. I was going to say how stupid is that, but how crazy is that?
Hold on, go back a little bit. I want to hear himself where he almost had the self-awareness to call himself stupid. And then he's like, I mean, how much of a genius am I?
It's right there. Although I blocked him years ago. Can you imagine blocking the guy you did a massive radio show with? I was going to say how stupid is that, but how crazy is that? I shouldn't say.
Because I'm not stupid. I'm really smart. I went to school, don't forget.
He's like, he could have been like, how stupid is that? That's how life turned out, or some shit.
Yeah, right. But he can't. The ego on this guy. He can't even call himself stupid in this dumb little rant he's doing.
But I had to block him years ago. Years ago. But that didn't stop him. No.
How do you know that, Opie, if you blocked him years ago?
And he was tweeting with him recently about Stuttering John and Anthony's heart attack. So
Well,
that's
this
a
is what
lot.
these guys do. When I was on with the guys the other day,
Mhm.
I guess minutes before the show, Stuttering John unblocked Cardiff so that he could report him. He reported his tweets, so he had to unblock him. That's what Anthony, I'm sorry, guys like Opie and John do, where like they block people and they claim like they don't even look at the haters, but they know exactly who they block. They unblock them. Pete Abraham did that to me too,
Mhm.
where he would block and unblock me at weird moments. And I guess that's a thing he did. I remember Carabas talking about the same thing, where Pete Abraham would like block and unblock you, and it's a form of him monitoring you,
Oh, good.
which is not creepy at all.
Just it's easier to make another account to snipe people.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, that's what I use the Why You Laughing account to monitor anyone that's blocked me if I need to. That's where it's weird if you look at the Why You Laughing search history. For some reason, Julie DeCaro is in there.
Troll accounts. That's a lot of fun and weird. But yeah, I'll get back with that guy and do a reunion show.
Hey, Opie, I got an idea. Don't react like that every time. It's the only thing people want to ask you about. So don't pretend you're really angry and hate it because you made a 40-minute episode about these kind of questions.
Or stunned that the question comes up.
Why? Listen, you people that only know me for one thing, why do you keep asking me about it? Why do you keep asking me about the one thing I have any intellectual curiosity about? Asshole.
This next clip is maybe my favorite one.
All right.
This is him talking about being too famous.
Oh, well, we've heard this with Dat Fan and Tom Myers and all these guys.
What company to have?
I'm an Opie fan. Like, I'm an Opie and Anthony fan. I took a picture with Anthony at Skankfest. I'm a fanboy.
Mhm.
I in my life, I haven't found a lot of people that like agree. I would say more in the last 10 years or so. I think Opie and Anthony's audience has grown more since they've been apart.
Mhm.
When they were on the radio exclusively in 2001, 2002, I didn't realize how famous they were, but Opie has an interesting perspective on it.
That's the only reason why I live in this city. That commute killed me. And then unfortunately, when me and Ann weren't getting along anymore, then I either had to drive every day or I started taking the train. And then I couldn't take the Long Island Railroad anymore because we were so famous that I got bothered to a point that...
Conductor, stop! Stop this vehicle at once!
We were so famous for being on radio.
Like fucking Alec Baldwin takes the subway.
No
Like,
shit.
you can get around in New York. They're literally I don't. There are things filmed in New York all the time, and people don't pick their fucking heads up.
No shit.
Like, famous people can walk around New York City. It's not a huge deal. Yet these two guys on the radio in 2001, 2002, like, most of their fans didn't know what they looked like.
Right. And I bet he didn't get a lot of, and maybe like, hey, what's up, Ope, or whatever. Maybe Wednesdays people would shout, whip him out or something at him. Like,
But here's the thing is, like, I believe he was recognized. Absolutely.
Definitely.
He's in the city. He's doing a radio show, and they were #1 in afternoon. I absolutely believe he's recognized. I don't believe, like, they couldn't fit any more people on the fucking train because it was swarming with Opie fans.
They were
I
so
couldn't take the train.
so famous that I got bothered to a point that it was exhausting. Now, instead of chilling out on a train for
It's
over
weird.
an hour,
Now, 54 people watched his last video. It's weird how that dissipated so quickly.
He's doing the Dice Instagram videos, but he means it. Do you want a picture with me?
There's some like we're going to talk about GD Fenderson later. Some of GD Fenderson's videos rival Opie's in numbers,
Oh boy.
and he's talking about how famous he is.
to talk to fans. Not that I always like talking to the fans, but at that point you want to just focus on the show, read newspapers, try to get your shit together. So then I had no choice. I had to live in the city. So that's the only reason I'm in the city.
No choice.
Honey, we have to move.
Wait, I don't even understand that. He couldn't live in like New Jersey and drive in because he was too famous.
Yep.
I don't get that logic.
How do you not get that? He's so famous. He
I
can't.
have to live in the city
Mhm.
because too many people in the city were recognizing me.
Yeah, he's too famous for Jersey, Mike. What don't you understand about that?
I don't understand. The part that I'm not getting is the people that recognized him were in Manhattan.
Or on the Long Island Railroad.
Wouldn't they be waiting outside his house with signs, "We love Opie"?
Yeah.
I don't get it. When you walk out of your building, the paparazzi must be there. That has to be disturbing. Wouldn't you want to hide in the woods?
Poor family, you know?
Can't I just live my life? Opie literally makes like TikTok videos now where he's walking down the street. If he was doing a dice bit, it would be funny. But he's just like, ma'am, you stepped in something. And the woman's like, okay, thank you. And that's the TikTok video.
Yeah. This is the last one of Opie.
Is this about book smarts?
This is about book smarts.
So again, we heard him like hint at this, that he thinks he's so much smarter than everyone. Anthony, in my experience listening to the Opie and Anthony show, this is a guy who dropped out of high school, was a tin knocker for many years. He's a dumb ginzo from Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
For what he did in school, he's extremely smart. Like his knowledge of history,
Yeah.
and pop culture and movies and like the references that he would pull out. Even like sometimes he would talk about like science and stuff like that. And like they had like Neil deGrasse Tyson on, and Anthony could ask him like intelligent questions about space and all this kind of stuff.
Questions that wouldn't make him go, oh, that's a stupid question.
Yeah, right. Like Anthony, for his level of schooling, I would say is incredibly intelligent.
Mhm.
And yet, for some reason, this was Opie's take. And this is interesting when you're on a show where the other two guys are smarter than you. And yet this is your takeaway that maybe Anthony should have conducted his life differently.
That's where like Anthony really, really needed to finish school. Anthony Cumia, when I knew him, I don't know the guy at all, and I've discussed this. I don't even know if I ever knew the guy, but when I was hanging with the guy every day doing that radio show, his street smarts were spot on. He had very, very good street smarts.
Street smarts, like Opie and Anthony, they weren't going down certain alleys because they knew they'd get mugged.
Oh, I know you want to go left here, but I just wouldn't.
Anthony's displaying a lot of street smarts.
Yeah.
Well, he knew what route to take to work to avoid all the paparazzi.
True. He was never detected on the way in.
And that's where maybe he should have continued going to school and taking maybe college classes or something, so he could understand, how to negotiate and understand.
I remember that. I remember in Miss Abel's English class where she's like, "Kids, this is where we negotiate today.
Yeah,
Sell me this pen."
That would be one of those helpful classes that we never got.
What fucking schooling are you talking about, Opie?
Or like,
He shouldn't have dropped out of high school because he missed out on negotiating class.
and understand that if you're a show that's bringing in millions of dollars, they weren't going to get rid of us. It just meant they were going to keep pushing the number until they could finally get you to sign the paper.
Ah, just like Mr. Williams taught me at East Longmeadow High School. Only a learned man could understand that.
Oh shit.
Fucking doofus. Stay in school. If you showed 15-year-old Anthony Cumia's life, where he's got a ridiculous house with a dumb dinosaur in the backyard. He's
Yep.
fucking girls 30 years younger than him.
Yep.
Guns and all kind. Like he plays video games all day. The message to that kid would be stay in school.
Your life didn't work out.
You dropped out and you fucked up, kid. That's fun. It's funny to watch like Opie and John and these guys. Unfortunately, I didn't get to. I thought Carl was inviting me on to make my pitch for everyone to stop talking about John. He completely dismissed that. Didn't even care about it.
No, you're going to talk about this.
But the interesting thing about these guys is like they create, and I think that's what makes them so interesting, and why John doesn't get Opie gets old at times for sure, but why John doesn't is like they create this alternate reality, and they believe it. Like I don't think these guys are liars as much as they are delusional, and like think some other version of their life is what actually happened. But who am I? You know.
You're just the guy that's sick of John, and you're not. Everyone's sick of
No,
John.
I'm not. Here's the thing: is like I'm interested in the John tent, as we call it, and like I'm interested in it for sure. And like if Carl and Shuli aren't sick of it, they should keep talking about it. My main thing, and I get it. Like when he does a show, like a couple that he did this week, I get why they're compelled to talk about it. My thing is, I just think it would be so interesting if John went through what Opie is going through, where no one pays attention to Opie. I think it would be actually more captivating than anything